Hi guys, I hope you're all well and welcome to episode 142 of the Layton Fitness podcast. So in this specific episode we'll be discussing how to build muscle. I'm firstly going to discuss some of the big changes, some of the big mistakes, that I've made personally throughout my training career, and then I'm going to discuss some of the key foundational principles that must be in place for you to build muscle as a male or a female. So firstly, let's just discuss some of the big mistakes I've made with my training when I was focusing on building muscle. So when I first started training when I was 16, this was just prior to going into sixth form, so it was the summer between leaving high school and going into sixth form. One of the things I wanted to do was to build muscle to attract girls, and I made so many big mistakes when I first started training, and if I'm honest, it probably took a good 3-4 years before I really started to optimize things, to actually focus on creating a calorie surplus that was actually tailored to my training age, training effectively to build muscle. However, initially I was making so many big mistakes, and the reason why I'm sharing a lot of these stories is just so important to realize that we all make mistakes throughout our training career. I don't want you to think that, it's fine for James, he knows exactly what he's doing, etc. I've made all of the mistakes and more that you've made in the past as well. So don't feel like there's any difference between me and you. There absolutely isn't. The only difference is I've done this for a much longer period of time, and therefore because of that I've started to build up my knowledge over that period of time and then started to optimize things. So here's probably one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started training, is really getting hooked on the changes in the mirror and wanting gains too quickly. It's so important to realize as a natural trainee just how slow muscle gains are for males and females. Within a fat loss phase, you can see progress pretty much on a weekly basis, whether it's the scale weight, the measurements, the body fat percentage, or progress photos. And towards the end of a fat loss phase, you really start to see some dramatic change of the photos just because you don't have that much body fat left to lose. Whereas in the muscle building phase, it's just critical to realize it's such a slow process. You really want to try and come away from how you're looking in the mirror and really focus on the process, which is ultimately getting stronger within the rep ranges you're doing, and therefore volume will be going up by default, and I'll discuss that later. And then focusing on the nutrition targets that will help create the energy surplus needed for muscle building. So focusing on those two processes, if you do that consistently over many months, then you'll start to see the structural changes. But that's one of the biggest mistakes I made, was getting obsessed with how I was looking on the mirror on a daily basis. You're just not going to see those changes there. Focus more on the process, and then the gains will come over time. And also make sure you're not trying to force muscle gains by eating too much to the point where you're gaining too much body fat, and as such this is going to result in you having to go back into a fat loss phase before entering a muscle building phase once again. Another big mistake I've made in the past is trying to stay far too lean within the muscle building phase. It's really important to note that because we'll be in a chronic calorie surplus, i.e. consuming more calories than you're burning, there will be a small degree of fat gain, and therefore you need to be okay with that. That was another big issue I had when I first started training. At times I wanted to stay too lean, and therefore I didn't allow myself to create the energy surplus, which really does help with the strength and volume gains. I was doing too much cardio, and sometimes my sessions were too long. I remember when I first started training, I was doing 2-hour sessions, which is ridiculous. I tried to basically train everything in one single session, and there's been times when I was running to and from the gym because I didn't want to gain too much body fat within the muscle building phase. You need to be okay with allowing yourself to gain some body fat. Another big mistake I made is focusing too much on the pump. You may have been in the gym before, and this is what everyone seems to talk about: training for the pump, doing lots of high repetitions, focusing on making your muscles look good in the gym, but that doesn't necessarily equate to muscle gains. Remember, muscles adapt to a progressive stimulus. You need to be increasing the stimulus over time, mainly via increasing volume, which is sets times reps times load. So in short, as long as your weights are going up and you're performing the same sets and reps, then volume will be going up by default. But you need to be gradually getting stronger over time. You need progressive overload needs to be taking place, as opposed to focusing on the pump and how you feel within your particular gym sessions. The final mistake I made was getting too fat within the muscle building phase. I've gone to both extremes. One where I was trying to stay too lean, and another particular occasion I was trying to force feed gains. And it's just really important that you're focusing on a monthly weight gain target, and I'll discuss these shortly, that's suitable to your training age. So basically, if you're an absolute beginner, you can obviously build more muscle at a faster rate for a period of time. However, the more advanced you get, those rates of muscle gain slow down, regardless of how many calories you're eating or how great the energy surplus is. You can only build muscle at a certain rate subject to your training age, and that's another big mistake I made in the past, was ultimately having far too many calories for my training age, gaining so much body fat. But because I remember this particular time I used to always train in a t-shirt, I still felt like I looked good, because it sounds quite funny, I used to look at myself from a distance in the mirror, and because of that, because I was never kind of up close, I still felt I looked good. But the reality is, I remember looking back at some of my Facebook photos during that time, I was fat. I gained far too much body fat, and that's because I was trying to force feed gains. I wasn't actually looking at the training age I had. I was relatively advanced at that point. I wasn't going to gain a huge amount of muscle each month. I was trying to force feed things. Right, so let's focus now on what we should be focusing on within the muscle building phase. So first of all, calorie surplus. There's a great quote from Lyle McDonald that says, you can't build muscle out of wishful thinking and thin air alone. That's so true. We need to be ultimately consuming more calories than we're burning, and again, focusing on a monthly weight gain target that's suitable to our training age. So if you have less than 6 months weight training experience, you're focusing on 1 to 3 pound per month gain. If you have between 6 months and approximately 3 years weight training experience, you're focusing on 1 to 2 pound per month gain. And then beyond 3 years weight training experience, you're going to be very close to your genetic potential. So instead of focusing on a monthly weight gain target, you're mainly focusing on eating enough to recover from your sessions to make volume gains, but you're not actively looking to set a monthly weight gain target, otherwise you'll just gain a lot of body fat. So even though the scale weight may fluctuate to a certain degree, you're not actually setting a target. And if you're a female, focus on approximately half of those recommendations. Next thing we need to focus on is sufficient protein. Having approximately 2 to 2.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for lean individuals, so people with approximately less than 15% body fat for males, and approximately 19% body fat or lower for females. If you're above those body fat percentages, focus on fat loss first, and then when you reach those body fat percentage figures, you can transition to a muscle building phase. Next, focusing on a training program where volume is increasing over time. So as mentioned, if you're getting stronger within the reps and sets you're currently doing, volume will be going up by default. So ultimately, keep striving to get stronger over time. You can also focus on training body parts more frequently. You can focus on adding in more sets to increase volume, but volume needs to be gradually increasing over time to create the stimulus needed for muscle gains. Next, focus the majority of your efforts around big compound exercises, things like squats, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, and variations of these. The reason why is these stimulate the most muscle mass, and also because these are exercises where using barbells, it's easier to increase your strength within these exercises over time. Therefore, this will equate to more volume gains over time. Next step, train body parts at least twice per week. There's a big myth in the fitness industry you need to train body parts once per week. Body parts recover much quicker than people think. By training body parts more frequently, you can stimulate muscle protein synthesis more frequently, but more important than that, we can actually have more volume within our week. If you're training body parts more frequently, it makes it easier to add more volume within your week. Finally, as soon as you've been training for a certain period of time, I'd say approximately 2 years, you'll start to notice some weaker body parts appearing. Certain body parts aren't as developed as others. This is a great time to start adding more volume, training these body parts with more frequency as well, as opposed to your stronger body parts. That's a great way to bring up some of those weaker areas. Train them more frequently, add more sets to those body parts within your week, and you'll soon see those weaker body parts catching up to those stronger body parts. So thank you very much for listening. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week. If you're still yet to subscribe to the podcast, please do so you don't miss an episode. And if you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton fitness.co.uk, you'll see a tab at the top of the page called free ebook, and you can download that immediately. Additionally, we're now comfortably over the 92,000 download mark. Once again, we're going to get to 100,000 downloads before the end of 2017. So thank you very much for those who have listened to any of the podcast episodes. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much.